What's up? I'm Marco.
I'm Alex.
And we are the Vagger Brothers, and behind us is the Berlin Wall.
That's because this week we're exploring East Berlin, 25 years after the fall of the wall.
In the last 100 years, Berlin has been through a lot. From the devastation of 2 world wars, to the division of the Cold War, and the freedom that has defined the city ever since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989.
These days, Berlin is known throughout the world as one of the coolest cities in Europe. A trendsetter in music, style, and nightlife that doesn't stop with the sunrise. In a city that's so cool, it can be hard for travelers to realize that this was once the front line in the Cold War.
At the end of World War II, the Soviet and Allied armies met in Germany and divided the country in two. West Germany was capitalistic and part of NATO, and East Germany was socialist and part of the Eastern Bloc. The same for Berlin, which was split into 4 sections ruled by occupying armies from Britain, France, the US, and Russia, and divided between East and West by the Berlin Wall.
That era suddenly came to an end in 1989. When the Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Union collapsed, and East and West Germany were reunited. So we decided to set the scene by staying in Ostel, a hostel decorated in the style of East Germany circa 1975.
Okay, so we know that Berlin is one of the most hip and happening cities in all of Europe, but it's totally different than it was 25 years ago before the fall of the Berlin Wall.
So we're gonna go down to the Berlin Wall, we're gonna hop on a bike tour and find out what life was like behind the Iron Curtain. We met up with Andre from Berlin on Bike Tours, who showed us around East Berlin and told us a bit of the history.
Hey, I'm Andre and I'm showing you Berlin on Bike. The story of the Cold War and the Berlin Wall is actually the shadow of the World War II. The front line between Germany and Britain, America, and on the other side the Soviet Union, splashed together within this country and Berlin, materialized in a wall. But until 1961 it hasn't been a wall yet. It was just a section line, but you could cross it. And then from the day on when the Berlin Wall was built, it was a question of time that the East version of the post-war Germany collapsed after, in the end, 40 years, the whole idea splashed.
These days, the Berlin Wall is largely gone, visible mostly through kitschy souvenir shops and moving memorials. But East Berlin remains a bit different. Soviet-style architecture, quirky traffic lights, and a palpably more creative, edgy vibe.
Artists came east right after the wall fell, when entire apartment buildings were abandoned by people who feared that their freedom would be short-lived. But it wasn't, and those artists were rewarded with really cheap rent.
One of the few remaining sections of the Berlin Wall is known as the East Side Gallery, which earned its name a year after the wall fell when 118 artists from around the world began covering it in murals, many of them deeply political in nature.
One of the most famous pieces is the Fraternal Kiss, which shows the leader of East Germany and the Soviet Union giving each other the socialist kiss, a once common greeting between Socialist Party members.
25 years later, we met with its creator, Russian artist Dmitry Vrubel, who still lives nearby, where he and his partner Victoria continue painting provocative pieces. We asked him what it was like to be in Berlin during such historic times.
I come from Soviet Union. And when we come to the Berlin, well, Ost-Berlin, yeah, we are sitting on Alexanderplatz, and around us Soviet building, and we drink some beer and say, yeah, so it's so good because it's Soviet Union, but absolutely freedom. East Side Gallery is symbol of art, that professional artists, not professional artists, people who never be artists in one place. It's not about art, it's about freedom.
The early 90s were a huge time of change for Berlin, and not just for artists. Abandoned factories became underground clubs famous for thumping techno, crazy parties, and an anything-goes attitude that's still very much alive.
Today, East Berlin feels like a city within a city, a hub for artists, entrepreneurs, and expats many of whom have turned their talents into transforming former factories into creative centers open to the public.
So we met up with Heinrich from Berlin Agent Tours, a 20-year resident of Berlin and an expert in all that is trendy, fun, and delicious in the city.
Now I've been here 14 years, and in the first second I fall in love in the authentic scene. It's not about being posh who we are, it's not money oriented. It's a little bit like, you know, the American dream, but the Berlin dream, you know.
First up, Henrik took us to New Heimat in Friedrichstein, a former train repair depot that's been converted into one of the most original spots in the city. It's part of an old industrial complex from the 1860s that non-German speakers call RAW, R-A-W, which is short for this.
Reichsbahn-Ausbesserungswerk.
Whether or not you can pronounce it, it's definitely worth a visit, especially on Sundays when it's full of street food and live music.
As we stuffed our faces, we asked Henrik what made East Berlin so distinct from West.
You know, West Berlin was already established after the war. East was stagnated because the Russians were here. So in the mid-90s, everything started here. And East Berlin is, you have the edge of everything. 90% of the nightlife is here. It's a cooler crowd, it's a creative scene. Lots of more expats, of course.
People from all over the world come to Berlin, and that is reflected in its food. From Turkish kebabs to Spanish tapas and Italian-styled street food. But we started off with something really special, a Vietnamese-style banh mi burger in a bun. Then it was time for round two. What is this, Mark?
Sweet potato and pumpkin mash with feta cheese, all sorts of nice greenery, and some roasted nuts.
Enough talking, it's time to start eating.
Everyone who comes to a city wanna, you know, do people watching over a glass of wine, have a bit food, meeting other people. It's international and it's rough. You know, it's a rough, cool place off the beaten track. Of course, it's crowded, but you know, this is a new place to be in Berlin, so that's why I brought you here.
All right, guys, that was our take on East Berlin. It's our first time in the city, and it's huge. It's like 9 times the size of Paris, so we're definitely gonna come back and make more content in the future.
For sure. This is the last video in our winter trip across Europe with Eurail, so hopefully you guys enjoyed our videos and you got inspired to make your own trip.
As always, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Vagabrothers for more travel videos every Tuesday.
In the meantime, follow us on our other social media, Instagram, Snapchat, and Story for little daily videos, because we're going back to California.
Okay, guys, stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the road.
Peace.
The winds of change blow strong. I don't know the lyrics to the song. Don't pick my nose on the camera. I'm singing.